Hello, everyone, and welcome to Very Cold Lasagna. Whether you're watching this on YouTube or listening to your preferred audio platform, wherever you get your podcast, this show is your safe space for the most filthy casual takes on the world of pro wrestling and sports. I'm your host, DylanLasagna. Welcome to the safe space, housing the icy yet spicy lasagna in the very cold fridge. And I hope you're having a good day, because today we are reaching the second portion, the second half of our NFL 2022 season previews as we transition over to the AFC side of our season previews, and starting with the AFC North. So I'm actually glad we're on this side of the NFL now, because, well, the NFC, it's kind of weak, because when we talked about the NFC, there's only realistically, I'm not sure if I mentioned this in my season previews. Honestly, there's only like a few teams that can be the representatives of the Super Bowl, and then maybe a couple surprises here and there. But when we talk about the AFC, oh man, it's gonna get wild. There are a lot of potential surprises that can be in store in the AFC this year compared to years past. So I'm really excited for this back half of our NFL season preview month as we inch closer towards the end of this month in July. So with that being said, I'm excited. I hope you are excited. In case you missed any of the season previews that we've done so far, make sure you check out the YouTube channel, and as well as, of course, wherever you get your podcast, wherever DylanLasagna does Very Cold Lasagna, the podcast. So make sure you listen to it, and make sure you listen to all the episodes too. So anyway, with that being said, let's get into our part 5 of our 2022 NFL season previews. If you somehow managed to miss any portion of our NFL season previews, I know I keep saying that word over and over again, but anyway, in case you missed any portion of it, we're pretty much discussing what the team did last year, what their offseason moves were, what players they got during free agency in the draft, and what were my takeaways from their offseason, and what do I really think. My opinions. These are just my opinions and mine alone. You can feel free to debate and refute them in wherever you want to. These are just my thoughts on like what this team can do in 2022. So those are just the reminders of what I'm going to be talking about here in these season previews. So with that being said, let's talk about the AFC North. So kicking off the AFC side of things with our season previews is the Ravens. Flock. The Baltimore Ravens. And it was not kind to the Ravens in 2021 because injury mania. They were the latest victims of injury mania. Going wild. What you gonna do, brother, when injury mania and all those injuries run wild on you, brother. Poor Ravens, man. They suffered a full rash of injuries to the likes of Marcus Peters, J.K. Dobbins, and even Lamar Jackson, whether it was in the preseason or in the regular season. And, you know, it wasn't like that whole wave. They were 8-3, even with all those injuries. But then December came, and even with all the injuries, they were making a lot of weird choices, going for 2 in critical games. And they went on a 6-game losing streak. Lamar Jackson gets hurt, misses the last couple of games of the season. Tyler Huntley, that was the quarterback's name, right? He does okay. He actually does solid in relief of Lamar Jackson, but unfortunately, all those 2-point conversion calls by John Harbaugh were kind of weird. It was kind of weird that they went for it when, sure, your defense kind of sucked in 2021, but at the same time, it's like going for 2 was pretty risky. So they end the season 8-9. And they had a chance to go to the playoffs, but they lost to the Pittsburgh Steelers at home in a winner home game. And yeah, they were dead last in the division because I think they got swept. No, they didn't get swept by the Browns. I guess they had a worst division record by them. So for the Baltimore Ravens, a very disappointing season for them. Not the way that they wanted to, but hey, they were in the fight for much of the season despite all the injuries. So, of course, your goal for 2022, if you're the Baltimore Ravens, is to stay healthy. And especially considering what had happened in the AFC North with the Cincinnati Bengals. They won the AFC. They went to the Super Bowl. They were just inches away from becoming the Super Bowl champions and an offensive line away from becoming Super Bowl champions against the LA Rams. So, if you're the Baltimore Ravens and you're Lamar Jackson and you're John Harbaugh, you want to assure that everyone gets healthy, they stay healthy through the season and preseason, mind you, so they could compete with the Cincinnati Bengals, they could compete with the Pittsburgh Steelers, and maybe even the Cleveland Browns in that very tight AFC North race. And sure enough, in the offseason, they did just that, at least on paper. Obviously, we're not in the regular season yet, but they made some moves to assure of that. And as long as they stay healthy, they'll be just fine. So looking at some of their offseason moves, they did re-sign some key defensive ends, Calais Campbell and Justin Houston, some pieces in their pass rush. And when you look at their offseason signings, it was pretty mostly on the offensive side of the ball. Not this offensive side of the ball, the defensive side of the ball. Because, well, their defense was pretty bad in 2021. They went out to get free safety Marcus Williams from the New Orleans Saints, defensive tackle Michael Pierce from the Minnesota Vikings, Kyle Fuller from the Denver Broncos, the corner. They did add a piece on the offensive line to protect Lamar Jackson, which was pretty good. They did lose their center, Bradley Bozeman, to the Carolina Panthers, though. So a key piece to their offensive line, pretty gone. But they did manage to address that in the draft with drafting a center by the name of Tyler Lindbaum from Iowa. And so another key thing that they did in the draft was trading away Marquise Hollywood Brown in a third-round pick to the Arizona Cardinals. And my thinking was, why would they do that? Why would the Baltimore Ravens trade away their top receiver? Perhaps he was asking for too much money. Maybe he was getting greedy, or the Baltimore Ravens didn't want to pay him. I don't know. But either way, it was a very strange thing to do. And especially considering they didn't really address it, like how to get his replacement in the draft. So they did manage to also get another safety in Kyle Hamilton from Notre Dame and outside linebacker in David Ojabo. So it helps out with the pass rush. So overall, the Baltimore Ravens offseason was pretty good. I just wish they would address getting another receiver because you still have uncertainty with your second receiver, Rashad Bateman. And I think Rashad Bateman is pretty solid. It's just that he was injured for a good half of the year last year. And he showed some potential, but when you have Hollywood Brown and Mark Andrews being your top two guys in the lineup, of course, you can't, like Lamar Jackson is not going to be able to feed Rashad Bateman that much because he's going to defer to his top man, Brown, and Mark Andrews because they're open so much. But this now that Marquise Brown is gone, and I think defense is going to target Mark Andrews more, what are you going to get out of Rashad Bateman? Like, what are you going to get out of him? So that's something to keep an eye on. And the fact that they don't have another option behind Bateman and Andrews is kind of baffling. It is kind of baffling. In whatever those number 2 or 3 options are supposed to be, they also have uncertainty. So the receiving options behind those two, it's kind of sketchy. It is kind of sketchy. But I did like their focus on the defense because that defense looks like it's going to be improved in 2022 with the pass rush, the secondary. I'm not sure how many points they're not going to allow, or if Marcus Peters is going to come back. But it all depends on if they can stay healthy. That's the key here, staying healthy in 2022. Now, looking at some of the key games in this coming season, it's the first 4 weeks of the season. You're pretty much facing off against the entirety your intra-conference schedule, the AFC East, the Bills, the Patriots, the Jets, and the Dolphins, like interchanging. You start off with the Jets in New York, and pretty much from there, you're going from Jets, Miami, Patriots, Bills. I think that I got that order correct. So pretty tough slate considering like how most of the teams in the AFC East improved, and the Bills, they're already a complete team. So pretty tough out for a Ravens team that's trying to stay healthy again and trying to get back to contention. And then after that slate, you have a home game against the Cincinnati Bengals, and then before your bye week 7 and 9 against the Cleveland Browns, whether it's Deshaun Watson or Jacoby Brissett, they're not going to be an easy go. And then you go to do your NFC South road slate against the Tampa Bay Bucks and Tom Brady, and then New Orleans Saints, and they're still not a pushover. So it's going to be a tough first half of the season for the Baltimore Ravens. But again, as long as they stay healthy, they should be in solid contention from there. Now, for Baltimore, the biggest question for the Baltimore Ravens, though, prior to the season is, do they get that contract extension done between themselves and Lamar Jackson? Because it's been a kind of a big talking point in the offseason. Lamar Jackson's eligible for that. I think he's entering the 4th and final year of his contract, and you don't want him to just waltz away as a free agent and then sign him for even more massive money. So you have to sign him. Like, you have to get this deal done. Otherwise, things can look awkward, or Lamar Jackson might report to training camp, which, by the way, starts at some point this week. And it's just, you just don't want to create this awkward situation throughout the season. And who knows, maybe Lamar Jackson could want more money. They could get offered more money by another team, and the Ravens might not be able to match it. You have to be careful here if you're the Baltimore Ravens. So for the Baltimore Ravens, I do think that they made a lot of improvements in the offseason, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Like I said, time and time again in this portion, as long as everyone can stay healthy, they don't run through a bad luck of injuries again, they are going to really compete with the Cincinnati Bengals this season. I could see them either being a wild card team with 9 or 10 wins, or outright winning the division with maybe that same amount of wins, or maybe even 11 to 12 wins. Because like Lamar Jackson's a good quarterback. I mean, granted, he doesn't run the ball even more, and his running backs stay healthy. And who knows, maybe a breakout option behind Rashad Bateman and Mark Andrews comes out. And then, of course, your defense is much improved. So don't count out the Baltimore Ravens in this AFC North title race against the Bengals, the Steelers, the Browns. They're just very much in it as every other team in this division. So next up, we are going to talk about the Cleveland Browns, or as we like to call them, the skid marks. Thank you, Shag Daddy. I learned something today. Why do we call them the skid marks? Well, it's pretty much their entire history of futility, of mediocrity. They're pretty much losing ways. And even when they win one year, they're right back to losing and being the toilet plungers of the NFL, the skid marks on your underwear. So for the Cleveland Browns, it's been a pretty interesting offseason for them. But before we can get into that, we have to briefly discuss what happened. How did we get to that point? Well, they were literally on the verge of going to their first ever AFC Championship game in the 2020 season. They had their first playoff berth in nearly 20 years. They demolished the Pittsburgh Steelers on the road, and they nearly took advantage of a Patrick Mahomes Kansas City Chiefs in the second half of the game, of that AFC divisional game, but they couldn't, and they lost, and they were watching at home the Buffalo Bills and the Chiefs in the title game that could have been theirs. And then this season came. They lose the first game to Kansas City in a rematch. And then week 2 came along. Baker Mayfield hurts his shoulder. He suffers a torn labrum, and it gets progressively worse all year. And his allowance to do so, it affected the whole offense. And there were a lot of untimely injuries as well, especially to the running back position, like Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. And there were a lot of COVID-19 positive tests from the rest of the team late in the year. And as a result, it led to a disappointing 8-9 record. And I think the biggest thing was, Kevin Stefanski had a lot of weird coaching decisions in games, but it most of it contributed to the Browns not shutting down Baker Mayfield, not forcing him out like on IR. They could have made a decision, but they didn't. They didn't check on him. So that's where the skid marks failed. They literally failed in 2021 because they let a injured quarterback, a very hobbled quarterback who couldn't throw, play for much of the season until they were literally out of the playoffs. Like, what the hell? So we get to this point now in 2022. We're like nearly on the verge of kind of a new start for the Cleveland Browns. Now, why do I say that? Well, let's look at what they did in the offseason. Starting with their re-signings, they did manage to get a couple of key pieces back on the defensive end, like Jadeveon Clowney, Sheldon Day, Ronnie Harrison, and then Anthony Walker. Then on the offensive side, you got one of your breakout backup running backs, Dearness Johnson back, and tackle Chris Hubbard. And then when you look at the offensive side of the ball, in terms of your additions, you got Jacoby Brissett from the Miami Dolphins. People were wondering, like, wait, why Jacoby Brissett? Well, that was because the Cleveland Browns, for whatever reason, of all the teams that were involved, they traded for Deshaun Watson. They went out of their way to go out and get Deshaun Watson from the Houston Texans and gave away yes, that's right, first-round picks, and along with 2 fourth-round picks and a future third just for Deshaun Watson. Desperate much? Or typical skid marks behavior? Like, holy hell. Holy hell. The Cleveland Browns, man. I mean, I'll get to my thoughts on that trade, but it seems like at the time, it seems like a risky move. But as the months have progressed, who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? They also trade for Amari Cooper, and if all he had to do was give away a 5th and 6th round pick from the Dallas Cowboys. Again, like I said, with the Dallas Cowboys, I'm not sure why they decided to give away Amari Cooper to the skid marks, but it is what it is. They got a big addition. The Cleveland Browns got a big addition, no matter who's at quarterback. So as a result of the Deshaun Watson trade, people wondering, like, what do you do with Baker Mayfield? What do you do with Baker Mayfield? And that was a talking point for the last couple of months since that trade went down. So finally, in recent weeks, Baker Mayfield got traded to the Carolina Panthers for a conditional 4th or 5th round pick in 2024. So there are certain conditions to be met. They also lost Jarvis Landry to the New Orleans Saints. They released their center for whatever reason, J.C. Treader. They also traded away their corner Troy Hill to the LA Rams for a future 5th round pick. So for the Cleveland Browns, it was mainly about getting help, but also losing some help for Deshaun Watson. And they didn't really, because they gave away all those picks to the Houston Texans, they couldn't really do much in the NFL draft. All they could do was draft a corner by the name of Martin Emerson from Mississippi State and a receiver from Purdue by the name of David Bell. So who knows if they turn out or even make the roster. We'll see. So for the Cleveland Browns this offseason, I will say first that they do have a better receiving core. Prior, they had pretty much nobody. The Odell Beckham experiment failed miserably. Primarily that was because, well, Baker Mayfield couldn't find Odell Beckham in the games he played. Donovan Peoples-Jones had his spurts. David Njoku, I mean, he was like somewhat reliable. He's somewhat reliable in that offense. But now you add Amari Cooper in that offense, and I think it could make them a little better. And that's why I say they're much better in years past. Now, as for the Deshaun Watson trade, the Browns could either look like the biggest winners or the biggest losers, because there are still some things to figure out with Deshaun Watson's sexual assault allegations, and that what the NFL is going to do in regards to that. Because Deshaun Watson apparently has 20 and 24 of those resolved, but the NFL is currently trying to figure out how many games to suspend Deshaun Watson for. They're trying to get him suspended for the entirety of the season, but it still remains to be seen. Who knows how many it is before the regular season or by training camp or however long it takes. We'll see. We'll see what happens, because the Cleveland Browns have to know sooner rather than later. So they can either try it out Jacoby Brissett for however many games, or maybe even the whole season, or go out and get a guy like Jimmy Garoppolo or some other quarterback that they think that they could trust for however many games or the whole season. Well, who knows? Who knows? So for the Cleveland Browns, it's mainly going to be about how many games Deshaun Watson going to be suspended for, and how that's going to impact the offense and their outlook on their chances to compete for an AFC North division title, let alone a playoff spot in 2022. And it's tough. It's really tough to figure out how Cleveland's going to project this year, because everything's right now, as we stand, as I'm putting this out, it's still murky. It is still an unresolved situation. So for the Cleveland Browns, all I can say is that if Deshaun Watson is not suspended at all, miraculously, I'm not saying he won't be, but in the wild event that he is, if Deshaun Watson is not suspended at all, for whatever reason, I can see the Cleveland Browns winning 10 to 11 games. 10 or 11 games. Maybe they get a wild card spot. Maybe they even win the AFC North. I don't know. Whoever gets 10 to 12 wins the AFC North. That's my projection. Now, if Deshaun Watson is suspended for, let's say, half of the season or a portion of that, maybe the Cleveland Browns go 7-10, or maybe 8-9 at best. Because Jacoby Brissett is not a shitty backup, but at the same time, he doesn't really elevate the offense to a 180th degree. And the Browns defense they can hold their own. But again, it's going to be on the offense carrying them. Now, if Deshaun Watson is suspended for the whole season, this is where it gets tricky. Do they roll the dice with Jacoby Brissett? Do they just throw the year away? If they throw the year away, maybe they'll be one of those bomb barrel teams. 4 to 6 wins, go for that high draft pick why even bother? Why even bother? Because you're giving it to the Houston Texans anyway. So maybe they go out and get that quarterback that's left on the market, whatever that may be, because they don't trust Jacoby Brissett. And maybe they go 6 wins. I don't know. If Deshaun Watson is suspended for the whole season. So for the Cleveland Browns, still some stuff to figure out with the Deshaun Watson situation. But whether or not he's suspended, they still have some talent. They still have some talent. They have their quarterback, potentially long term, depending on how things look. But for 2022, it's a difficult situation for Cleveland. So now let's talk about the team that made it to the wild card but got bounced from it, and that is the Pittsburgh Steelers. And it's the beginning of a new era, because 2021 marked the end of an old era, and that was the Big Ben Roethlisberger era. It was his swan song in 2021, but man, it was kind of a drag, to be honest with you. It felt like one of those slow like movies where you just want to get it over with. I mean, I like Big Ben Roethlisberger and what he's done for the NFL, but this was kind of painful. This was kind of a painful season for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And yes, people have their nostalgia for Ben Roethlisberger, and that Monday night game against the Cleveland Browns was pretty good. Was pretty good. It was like a good feeling for them in their fan base, but it was just kind of a drag for most of the season because Big Ben he couldn't sling the ball anymore. He couldn't air it out. He was committing a lot of turnovers. Like in the season prior, Najee Harris couldn't really get the run game going for Pittsburgh. The receiving core was struggling as well, especially with Juju Smith-Schuster out for the season, and then the defense led by T.J. Watt, who broke the single season sack record. No, he tied it with Michael Strahan. They really had to carry the load. They really had to pick up the slack for the washed Pittsburgh offense. They did go 9-7-1. Yes, they tied the Detroit Lions that 1 week, and they netted the final AFC playoff spot in a win-or-go-home game against the Baltimore Ravens on the road. But unfortunately, that was just the icing on the cake, and they got fed as appetizers to the Kansas City Chiefs in the first round. So, not exactly the greatest way to end the Big Ben Roethlisberger era in Pittsburgh. So, going into 2022, your ultimate goal is to find that quarterback to kickstart the new era and, keep some semblance for Mike Tomlin. And whoever that quarterback's going to be, whether it's someone relatively still young or like a new guy, like a rookie, they got to help him get his feet wet through, like, keep him comfortable first with the running game and the defense until he gets his bearings. So some of the things that they did in the offseason, they did keep some key defensive pieces like Minka Fitzpatrick, their free safety, and their corner, Akella Witherspoon. Some United fans may remember him. He's doing pretty solid in Pittsburgh now, by the way. And then we get to their additions. When you look at their free agent signings, this was the one that really had Pittsburgh fans questioning themselves. Like, why am I Yinzer? Why am I a Yinzer? But first, let's talk about Levi Wallace going to the Buffalo Bills, their corner. Good addition for them. But then we get to the MVP, the first ever Nickelodeon valuable player, Mitch Trubisky. Good old Mitch Trubisky is back in the headlines once again. And holy hell, I actually want him to win the starting job just so people can roast him yet again. So the MVP, the first ever inaugural MVP, Mick Trubisky is back as the potential starter to win yet another MVP in the Nickelodeon wildcard game in 2023. So who knows? Maybe Pittsburgh can go to the wildcard and get another MVP. So when you look at the other additions that Pittsburgh added, it was mainly on the offensive line. You look at guards James Daniels from the Chicago Bears, Mitch Trubisky's old team, center Mason Cole from the Minnesota Vikings. So they improved on the offensive line. So that's good. And then on the defensive end, you added Miles Jack from the Jaguars. So their offensive line and their defense look good now. The defense got even better, though. So, of course, you lose Ben Roethlisberger to retirement. He called it a career. You also lose your general manager, your longtime general manager, Kevin Colbert. He left after the 2022 draft. I mean, he's been there for 22 years, so it's understandable. And he got replaced by Omar Khan. And they added, they actually lost the receiver Juju Smith-Schuster to the Kansas City Chiefs. I don't know, Pittsburgh didn't have enough money, or Juju Smith-Schuster wanted to go somewhere else to prove that he's going to be a top receiver somewhere else. I don't know. So they also lost the naming rights to Heinz Field. So yes, they lost the name rights to the ketchup brand, and now it's known as Acrisure Stadium. I'm not a Pittsburgh fan, but that's kind of a lame name. I feel sorry for people. So the hopes of Mitch Trubisky, of him getting the MVP for 2023 in that Nickelodeon wildcard game, could be potentially dashed because the Pittsburgh Steelers drafted Kenny Pickett from the University of Pittsburgh. So a little bit of familiarity with this guy because the Pitt played their home games in that stadium. So they know what to potentially expect out of Kenny Pickett. And I know people make fun of his hand size and all that, but yeah, you never know like what's going to happen in the NFL. And I know I've poked a little bit of fun at Kenny Pickett and for his hand size, and I made a little criticism about it. But hey, like I said, you never know what you can get out of Kenny Pickett in the NFL. But I'm not saying he's going to be a massive success with the Pittsburgh Steelers, but you never know. You just never know. They also managed to add some pieces to the receiving core, especially considering that Juju Smith-Schuster is gone, and you don't really have much proven like top receivers, or let alone a wide receiver too. They got George Pickens from the University of Georgia and Calvin Austin III, who I think I talked about in my Filthy Casual preview from the University of Memphis. So two solid guys. Now, of course, going into the season, from what I saw from the Steelers offseason, is that I think the defense is going to be the focal point of Pittsburgh in 2022. And I gotta say it, they're only going to be able to carry them as far as they can. Like, it's going to be the same story like it was in 2021. TJ Watt's going to have a good year. Minka Fitzpatrick's going to have a good year. Ahkello Witherspoon might do a couple of things, but that pass rush can only do so much. The secondary can only do so much because at the end of the day, it's all about the offense. It's all about the offense in the NFL. And whether it's Mitch Trubisky or Kenny Pickett that's going to be starting, if they can't produce, if they can't do at least a solid job of running that offense, they're screwed. They are screwed, especially considering that the Bengals and the Ravens have much better quarterbacks than what Pittsburgh has to offer and much better offenses, mind you. They're fucked. They could be fucked. So who knows? Maybe it could be like Mitch Trubisky does bad one week, and then you have to put in Kenny Pickett, and then Kenny Pickett does bad one week, and then Trubisky has to come in. It's gonna be like a very bad cycle. It could be, but damn, it's rough. So looking at some of their key games for 2022, it's pretty much every single game before that bye week in week 9. Damn. So looking at their schedule, weeks 1, 3, and 5, you have road games. And weeks 2, 4, and 6, you got your home slate. But looking at that stretch, it's god dang. So looking at their road stretch in those odd weeks, you have to go to Cincinnati to start your season. And then after your home opener against the Patriots, you have to go to Cleveland. And then after Cleveland, you go home to face the Jets, who knows? Like, they could be either worse than last year or they could be even better. Who knows? Then you have to go play the Bills, and then you go home to play Tom Brady and the Bucks. Then you go back on the road for a 2-game road trip to Miami, and then you go to Philadelphia. Rough. Very, very rough. That's not a good stretch if you're the Steelers. So, of course, the biggest question for the Pittsburgh Steelers is, who wins that starting job? Is it the proven MVP, Mitch Trubisky, or is it small hands, Kenny Pickett? Who wins that starting job? And until then, we don't know what to expect for the Pittsburgh Steelers. What I can slightly predict is how much they could possibly win in 2022. Sure, they got a good defense, but the offense, of course, is the name of the game. So what I think could possibly happen is that the Steelers could, at worst, go 6 wins. Yes, I'm saying that because, like I said, the defense can only take them so far, but that offense could look like dog doogie water or maybe the offense under Mitch Trubisky or Kenny Pickett could look okay. It could do enough to get you 9 wins, but possibly not a playoff spot. So either way, it could be another year where the Steelers could get that MVP, that Nickelodeon wildcard game, and get another MVP from Mitch Trubisky, or they can open the picket line. They can paint that picket line from one and only Kenny Pickett. So, of course, the final team that we're going to be talking about is the reigning, defending, undisputed AFC North champions and the AFC champions, the Cincinnati Bengals. And you got to admit, with the Bengals, and they had a very surprising season. And they had a surprising journey, too. A very short turnaround, mind you. Looking back almost 3 years ago, they were the worst team in the NFL. They have gone through hell and high water. 2-14, worst record in the NFL. They look like dog dookie water, even with Andy Dalton over there. In 2020, they draft Joe Burrow, ship Andy Dalton out of town, and they went through that ugly season, but you saw something out of Joe Burrow. But he goes down with a torn ACL, and then in 2021, you don't really prioritize the offensive line, which contributed to Joe Burrow getting that ACL tear, and you get his buddy, his receiver that he did so well with in college, Jamar Chase. And despite that terrible offensive line, those two really did well in 2021. And they're guys like Joe Mixon and T. Higgins, and a solid defense led by Jesse Bates, and some very good games in December, along with, sure, you could say that injury mania to the Baltimore Ravens and a washed-ass offense by the Pittsburgh Steelers contributed to this as well. But they ran the table. The Cincinnati Bengals ran the table. They got some key wins, especially against the Kansas City Chiefs in January last year, to clinch the AFC North, to have a winning season for the first time since 2015. They went 10-7, thanks to the defense, thanks to the calm, collected progression of Joe Burrow and the breakout of Jamar Chase in his rookie year. And pretty much almost a lot of people on that team really fought hard for Joe Burrow in 2021. Now, again, that shaky offensive line really became a factor in their playoff run, but still, they managed to will past the Vegas Raiders. They managed to overcome a 9-sack letdown against the Tennessee Titans, and they ran the table. They overcame like a big deficit against the Kansas City Chiefs and turned that into an overtime victory to go to the Super Bowl against the LA Rams. And unfortunately, that same offensive line let Joe Burrow down, and a weird decision to have a backup running back run the ball on third down and that going nowhere, and that offensive line failing Joe Burrow on that final play. It was just a little questionable, but hey, it is what it is for Cincinnati, and they're looking to go back to at least the AFC title game and maybe the Super Bowl in 2022. But again, it's always hard the next year, but that doesn't mean that they prioritize what made them lost in the offseason. So looking at how they can accomplish that goal in 2022 to get back to the Super Bowl, to get back to the AFC title game at least, they made some key decisions in the offseason. They re-signed Jesse Bates, but it was under the franchise tag, and he's reportedly shown by various outlets that he may not want to play under that franchise tag. They also re-signed a corner that hasn't been exactly the best for Cincinnati in Eli Apple, and defensive tackle B.J. Hill, who's been key to that Bengals pass rush. They also prioritized this is the biggest priority in the offseason, and that was the offensive line, who let them down in the Super Bowl. And they prioritized this big. And they got some big additions in center Ted Karras from the New England Patriots, guard Alex Kappa, Tom Brady's key guard in that Super Bowl run against the Tampa Bay Bucks, tackle Lyle Collins, Dak Prescott's key left tackle from the Dallas Cowboys. So the Bengals really, really did well addressing that top priority need. And maybe, who knows, maybe they really protect Joe Burrow well this coming season. And they lost CJ Uzomah to the New York Jets, but they countered that by adding Hayden Hurst from the Atlanta Falcons. I mean, Hayden Hurst he's kind of mixed, but hey, maybe he does well with this Cincinnati offense. They also lost Larry Ogunjobi to the Pittsburgh Steelers, but again, they re-signed BJ Hill, so they should be okay. So looking at some of their draft picks, they drafted safety Daxton Hill. So in the case that Jesse Bates holds out, they went on to sign Daxton Hill, who's pretty solid. They mainly focused on the defensive side of the ball by adding Cam Taylor Britt, mind you, from Nebraska, and defensive tackle Zachary Carter from Florida. They also beefed up the offensive line too by adding Cordell Volson from North Dakota State. So overall, this is a massive win for the Cincinnati Bengals. They massively improved the offensive line to better protect Joe Burrow so he can have more time to throw and execute the offense with linear receivers like Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Hayden Hurst, and you have a running back core of Joe Mixon, and I forgot the other one. Sorry. It's early, okay? But anyway, they also have a good defense as well, and they have what it takes to run it back. The question is, can they? Because compared to last year, they were playing a dead last schedule. They were playing the New York Jets. They were playing the Jacksonville Jaguars. Also, they were benefiting from other teams either like in a slump or getting injured, like the Ravens and the Steelers and the Browns. Their own division was getting like self-mauled. They were self-imploding. So, I mean, I'm not discrediting the Cincinnati Bengals for winning the AFC North or let alone making the Super Bowl because, like I said, they had a very surprising turnaround. And I think that the Bengals can and will compete in this AFC. It's just that it's going to be very difficult now that everyone in that division, a good amount of the AFC is going to be healthy and they're going to be fighting just as hard as they are. So it's going to be very tough for the Cincinnati Bengals. Plus, on top of the fact that, especially in the NFL, for anyone that loses the Super Bowl in the last decade and a half, it has been very rough. It has been very rough on what losing the Super Bowl could do to you. Just look at recent examples like the LA Rams, the San Francisco 49ers, the Carolina Panthers, the Seattle Seahawks in the last decade and a half, the Oakland Raiders in 2002 after that blowout loss to the Tampa Bay Bucks. For the Cincinnati Bengals, I mean, I'm not saying that they're going to go 6-11 or suffer these rash of injuries. It's just they have to overcome that adversity and they have to take care of their business and assure that nothing shitty happens to them in order to make this run yet again. So, looking at some of their key games in 2022, you look at Week 1 against the Pittsburgh Steelers. You don't know who Pittsburgh's going to trot out, whether it's Mitch Trubisky, the MVP, or Kenny Pickett with the picket line. So, for Cincinnati, you have to be ready for anything, especially in the event that you can either walk out with a victory or you can possibly let down. And looking at their Week 4 game against the Miami Dolphins, you're playing against Tua and that new improved offense, new improved offensive line, Tyreek Hill, who's there, and Cedric Wilson. A lot of improvement in that Miami Dolphins offense. So it's going to be a potential shootout in that game. And then you get late in the season. That's going to be a massive gauntlet. It's going to be tough. And who knows what Cincinnati's standing is by that point. Are they going to be in contention for the division title? Or maybe a top seed? Or are they going to be competing for a playoff spot alone? Or fighting for their playoff lives? Because that final stretch of the season is pretty rough. They have to face the Chiefs at home. They have to face the Browns, whoever is going to be at quarterback. And then they have road games against the Tampa Bay Bucks and the Patriots. But they do get a homestand to end the season. But it's a pretty rough homestand. Josh Allen, the Bills, and then Lamar Jackson, the Ravens. That is brutal. That is a brutal start into the season. So for the Cincinnati Bengals, you improve the offensive line, but how are they going to gel in front of Joe Burrow? And Jamar Chase did have an incredible season, but not every season's the same. So is he going to do even better, or is he going to like slightly regress? Because I like Jamar Chase, but who knows what's going to happen with him? I hope he does well again. And how does Joe Burrow do against a much harder full slate of teams? Because he's not just going to be facing the Chiefs this season, or the Ravens, not healthy Ravens this season. He's going to be facing the Bucks, the Patriots, the Bills, a newer Browns team. So these are going to be harder teams than compared to last year when they went on that Super Bowl run. It's going to be a rough stretch. I mean, I still think that the Bengals have a good shot to win the AFC North. They still have a good shot to win, like, let's say 10 to 12 games. But it's going to be a very difficult season for them, especially coming off a Super Bowl loss, which, again, I hope they don't get that curse placed on them. But in order for them to get back to the Super Bowl, let alone the playoffs, they have to overcome adversity yet again. They have to hope that offensive line gels in front of Joe Burrow. They have to hope that they don't get complacent. They have to do better this year. So that was the AFC North and my preview of them, all 4 teams in 2022. I haven't done a proper ranking of them, any of the teams in my season previews, but that's with good reason, because you just don't know what to expect. But if you want it so much, if any of you want it so much, I guess I could start with the AFC North. So, in my personal opinion, from the teams that I talked about, considering that it's going to be so competitive, I'd say the Cincinnati Bengals, the Baltimore Ravens, maybe the Cleveland Browns, and the Pittsburgh Steelers. That's 1, Bengals 1, Ravens 2, Browns 3, Steelers 4. Yes, I have the Steelers 4 because, well, I don't know about the quarterback situation. And Cleveland, well, you don't know about the Deshaun Watson situation. So as much competitiveness and much feistiness as there is in this AFC North this year, there's also a lot of uncertainty. There really is a lot of uncertainty in this division. But it's going to make for exciting football. It really is. And honestly, I can't wait for it, even though I don't get the games in my area. So whether you're a Bengals fan, Ravens fan, Browns fan, Steelers fan, what are you most excited about for your teams in 2022? Let me know how you feel about any of those teams, and however you can. All right. But that is it for this episode of Very Cold Lasagna. I am your host, DylanLasagna. Thank you for tuning in to this fine episode number 109 of this filthy casual podcast. Make sure you tune into the show wherever you get your podcast, and follow the show on social media, on Twitter and Instagram at Very Cold Lasagna. And as always, keep that lasagna very cold in the fridge. Your takes on the world of pro wrestling and sports. And until next time, peace out.